All right, good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so I always feel like I come up here and I'm the bearer of bad news, so just bear with me while I bear bad news. We do have some pretty significant changes that are coming up. I'm not going to cover all of the things, but just some really significant things, stuff that has happened recently and stuff that is upcoming. Okay, so just briefly for the topics that I'm going to cover, I'm going to start off with our pollinator protection. We're going to move into medical supervision changes, then carbon monoxide pest control devices, that's always a fun one. Changes coming with the neonicotinoid pesticides, and then our PAC and fumigation licensing changes. First off, we're going to start off with the changes that happened in the pollinator protection. This was originally under our work requirements in a different numbered section, and they moved that to where it's now under its own chapter and subchapter under pollinator protection. And one of the biggest things we're going to focus on here, I'm going to get into some label language and some things like that, and we're going to keep referring to the be active versus inactive period. That's one of the bigger changes that happened here, to where previously by regulation bees were considered inactive below 55 degrees. They dropped that and now it's below 50 degrees. And then it depends on, that temperature is in there, and then there's also sunset and sunrise time. So they're generally considered inactive 1 hour after sunset and 2 hours before sunrise. And then they kind of update it according to technology, so you guys can look not in your local newspaper, because who reads the newspaper anymore, but your local news channel or website. But one thing that we want to draw your guys' attention to is that bees don't care about regulations, and to my knowledge, they don't know how to read. So you guys have to train your people and yourselves, if you're doing your own applications, to keep an eye on what's happening in the field, because regardless of whether it's, below 50 degrees or what time it is, if bees are there, then you have to follow the label, which will say, most labels will say do not apply when bees are actively foraging in the treatment area. So just pay attention to what's happening in the field. Okay, so that we're aware of what we're talking about, we have our citrus bee protection area, so we're going to start off with a definition of that. And so these changes apply to the citrus bee protection areas between March 15th through May 31st. And the protection area means the area within 1 mile of any citrus planting of 1 acre or more, so that's most of them, within Fresno, Kern, or Tulare counties. So just to go over, it's a pretty involved regulation once you get down to the specific one, so I'm just going to focus on what changed. The first couple ones that we have here relate to apiary operators themselves. Before, you just had to register your locations that were considered being in this area. They changed that, so any apiary location, if they have bee boxes sitting anywhere that's considered an apiary location, they're supposed to register those, and then they need to tell their local ag commissioner when they're going to move them 72 hours before moving. The bigger change that's going to focus to applicators is they used to have these exemptions to pesticide application notification for these apiary operators, and it specifically included 3 active ingredients, which was methomyl. I'm not going to bother to pronounce a lot of these active ingredients because it's tongue twisters for sure, but commonly known as Carzol and Lorsban. Lorsban, that's an easy one. It's chlorpyrifos. That registration has been canceled in California, so you can't use it anyway. And it used to do those, you could do it without notifying your apiary operators in that 48 hours that's required in the regulation for those specific chemicals. They took that out, and now it's replaced with a language that says any pesticide that includes the word toxic to bees on the product labeling, you can do it without notification of the beekeepers during that March 15th to May 31st time period, if that label allows you to do applications when bees are inactive. So if you're doing that 1 hour after sunset, 2 hours before sunrise, then you don't have to notify your beekeepers, but it's only during that time period. And it's only in a citrus bee protection area. So what I like to tell people is just to make your life easier. I like to use the acronym CYA. I think most of you guys know what that means. It's better just to notify everybody all the time, even if you don't have to, so that way, you're past that 1 mile or the dates aren't quite right, you're still covered. You're not going to get in trouble for doing more than what you're supposed to, you're going to get in trouble for doing less than what you're supposed to. And then one reminder here that is not on the slide is that any pesticide containing carbaryl, so that's most commonly known as 7, that is not allowed to be applied in those protection areas from first bloom until after complete petal fall. So just keep that in mind. This is going to seem kind of Obvious pesticides toxic to bees are those that include the words toxic to bees on the labeling. Duh. But what I want to point out to you guys, and the reason that I put this up there is this thing at the end here of our modifying words. When we start looking at different labels, they're going to have a lot of words on them, and it's going to make it sound like maybe it's okay, but is it really okay? This is when we're going to get back to this specific toxic to bees, because some will say highly, some will say kind of, sort of, so it just kind of depends on that. So we're going to get into some labels here, and these, you're always going to find the bee restrictions under environmental hazards if you guys don't know where to look for it. So we're going to start off with a sale, and it says this product is toxic to bees exposed to direct treatment. Do not apply this product while bees are foraging in the treatment area. So it has toxic to bees. Okay, great. So you can't apply it when bees are active. So you have to wait for that 1 hour after sunset, 2 hours before sunrise. But then I want to point your attention to success at the top, because a lot of these labels will have extra time that you have to add on. So we have this product is toxic to bees, we have our toxic to bees, cool. But exposed to treatment for 3 hours following treatment. So that's when you have to kind of stop and do some math. So you do a treatment, it's toxic 3 hours before, and then you have that 2 hours before sunrise where bees are considered active. So now you're looking at 5 hours before sunrise. And this will change. Sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's 3. You guys gotta look at the labels and kind of find these little Easter eggs and bee information to make sure you guys are staying on the right. And then I have 7 up here, and just remember, from first bloom until complete petafol, you cannot use 7 at all by California regulation, but you'll notice that they have some kind of more complicated label language, and I just put that up there to show you guys that there's a lot of different things that are gonna be happening on different labels, and you need to pay attention. All right, and this is another one that we run into. This is kind of where I put that toxic to bees slide up there, because this one says toxic to adult bees in laboratory studies via oral exposure, blah, 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 but field studies conducted in this product show no effects on honeybee colony development. So is this one okay to use? During times when bees are inactive? It's kind of debatable depending on who you ask. Some will say yes, some will say no. I'm gonna go back to the direct, regulation itself, and then it does say toxic to bees on this label. And again, I'm always going to point you guys to CYA measures. Only use this when it's during the inactive period of 1 hour after sunset and 2 hours before sunrise. All right, and then just to kind of give you guys some quick notes on these, in a citrus bee protection area, the 48-hour NOI that it talks about in there is only required if the toxic to bees label does not allow application during the bee inactive period. Those are really rare. I'm not even sure why that's in there. Outside of the citrus bee protection area is March 15th through May 31st. You do need to do that 48-hour notification of any apiary operators prior to any toxic to bees pesticides. So these are going to be your insecticides basically. If you guys are doing fungicides or herbicides or things like that, most of those don't have anything related to bees on those labels, but you do always want to take a look just to make sure you guys are in the clear. And like I said, when in doubt, just notify. You're not going to get in trouble for doing more, you will get in trouble for doing less. It used to be back in the day, we had a big map on the wall with the ag department with literal pins where bees were in a little plastic thing that you would call us, and we would try and find the stuff. They've taken that away, and now it's all done online. It's a program called Beware. It operates in association with our permitting system. Your login, if you have a CalAg permit login to do use reports and other things like that, is the same one that this site works off of. If you guys are unsure how to use this, or if you don't know what that login is, just contact your local ag commissioner and they can get you set up with it. But this is what you use now. You just go on your computer and you find your location of where you guys are going to spray, and it'll give you contact information for who's in the area. But that contact information is only available for growers. The PCAs and some other people that have access to the system, because of confidentiality laws surrounding beekeepers, it won't let you do that. But it'll at least alert you that something is nearby, and you can kind of work together to figure that out. Okay, we're going to jump into medical supervision changes. This actually just went into effect on October 1st, this year. And medical supervision has been a thing for quite some time, and just to refresh your memories, if you guys don't know what this is for, it's for any employees that are handling any organophosphate or carbamate with a single word of warning or danger. We do have a couple pesticides floating around there that are organophosphate carbamates, but they're cautions, so this won't apply to that, just warning and danger. The changes that we have is that any employee who regularly handles, and regularly handle is classified as they handle it, this means mixing, loading, rinsing, pouring actual applications, more than 6 times in any 30-day period, that counts as regularly handled. And just a word of caution, people used to focus on this as like 6 days per month. It's a rolling 30-day period. So if they use it 3 days in the end of October and the first 3 days of November, that's when a lot of this stuff is going to kick in. So just remember that 30-day clock only resets. It's any 30-day period. So you always had to be, if you classified under regularly handled, you had to be under doctor care. They made a change here of that the doctor that your employees are under the care of has to be a medical supervisor registered with the Office of Environmental Health Hazards and Assessment. So it can't just be any doctor. You guys need to ask some questions of who's doing your medical supervision and make sure that they meet this provision of the regulation. The other one that changed is they've always had to have baselines done, but now they put in a time requirement of the employees you're sending in to do that baseline. They cannot have had any exposure to any organophosphate or carbamate pesticides, regardless of signal word, for 30 days prior to when they do that baseline test. All right, now we're going to get into the fun stuff. There's pressurized carbon monoxide pest control devices that are used for burrowing rodent control. We didn't used to have any regulation authority over that, but now we do. I'm sorry, I got my dates wrong. This is the one that started at the beginning of this month. So this is now under the regulation of DBR, which means it's now under our enforcement umbrella. So there's 5 things that you guys need to be aware of if you do happen to use any of these devices. The first is that that device has to have a US EPA establishment number on it. This cannot be used inside any structure. A lot of us have focused in the past on occupied structures, but this is any structure. So no storage sheds, no, barns, nothing. No structures. It cannot be used inside of. Number 3, it has to be used at specified distances away from structures depending on what type of burrowing critter you're after. So we have 50 feet for ground squirrels and field mice, 100 feet for gophers, and 65 feet for all other burrowing rodent pests. And this just has to do with the way that rodent constructs its burrow itself. Some of them are longer or shorter, so the likelihood that that burrow can go up under a structure is going to be shorter or longer depending on which critter you're actually after. And then number 4, it's not to be used on a burrow known or believed to contain non-target vertebrate animals. So this is going to be your foxes, your burrowing owls, your gopher snakes, your things like that. So obviously if you don't know what's in there, you can't be held responsible for what you don't know, but if we can prove that you did know that something was in there, that's when you're going to be in trouble. And number 5, it's not to be used for purposes other than to control burrowing rodent pests. I don't know what these other purposes might be, but a lot happens in hold my beer situations, so just don't do that. And then another part of this regulation, this is specifically for employees of pest control businesses, so people who do pest control for hire. If you're an employer of these employees for a pest control business, you need to make sure that those employees using these devices wear protective eyewear, that you're keeping records of this use, and that you're reporting any adverse effect that occurs from the use of this device. It's a new thing that's being regulated, so they want to know when things go wrong, so they know that we can add extra measures to make sure everybody who's using these things are safe. This is just an example of what some of these things look like. We have our rodinator over here, and then again, it is pressurized carbon monoxide, which is what comes out of exhaust. And there are kind of some crafty people out there that have made some really fun homemade devices, so don't do that either. It has to have that US EPA registration number, so just keep that in mind. And then these are some older pictures that we have, but just be careful when you're using this stuff. It is a fire hazard. We're in a drought. Things are very dry. You don't want rodents and fire. I mean, that might solve your rodent problem, but create a whole bunch of new ones. Okay, so this is a lot of words on this page. We're just going to focus on the yellow that's in the bottom. These are the upcoming neonate regulations that are going to happen. So there's 4 main active ingredients that fall under this umbrella. And the control measures, in summary, are going to be application method and rate restrictions, application timing restrictions, seasonal application rate caps, and they're going to be specific based on the crop that you're using them on. This is going to be a lot of information. Just keep in mind all of this is still in proposed regulation point. I think we're still in a comment period that's supposed to end on 10/21. So if you have something to say about this, log on to DPR, tell them what you want them to know. I'm just going to run through some of this stuff just to kind of give you guys some ideas of what's going to happen if you guys are PCAs, growers, and multiple things. Crop groups have numbers. This is just a list of what is going to be listed under here, which is pretty much everything. And then, like I said, it's the 15-day comment period that ends on the 21st. That's coming up very soon, so if you have something to say it now or hold your peace. And then it will have those application restrictions. So just to kind of give you an idea, a lot of this is going to be related to bloom times. That's what restrictions are going to be happening here. This is for small berries. I'm going to kind of just blow through a lot of this sort of stuff. This is showing you that it has combined application rates. There's actually going to be some differences between whether you're doing soil or foliar applications, and so combined as those two together. You've got limits that apply to each one and also added together. And that's kind of an idea of what that is. And then I'm going to jump here to citrus groups, because that pertains to you guys. So what they're kind of talking about right now, what I've got here was heavier than what I have to go through. Okay, so it's going to be prohibited during bloom, so no neonics are going to be able to be applied during citrus bloom period, and you have your maximum combined application rate of the 0.422 pounds active ingredient per acre per season. And that's going to break down to the 0.25 for soil and then 0.172 for foliar. So just to kind of give you guys an idea of a lot more math is going to be involved and some extra record keeping is going to be involved. And that's coming through. We're not exactly sure when this is going to go into effect, but it's coming soon. And then again, just to kind of show you guys, not only is it going to be different for soil application versus foliar application, those maximums are going to be different depending on the neonic active ingredient that you use. And again, a lot of this is complicated. It's a lot of information to digest, so you can just hop onto the DPR website. If you guys are having too good of a day and you want to know what's coming down the pipeline, all you do is just type into Google DPR proposed regulations and it'll list all the things that they're working on. Okay, for the final fun one, and this is something we're still trying to wrap our heads around, so some of this information may change, but this is kind of the nuts and bolts of what's happening. So what I'm going to go over here real quick is there's going to be changes to the private applicator certificate. That's the brown card that you guys are all used to having if you're doing your own applications. There's going to be a separate one if you guys are doing control of burrowing rodents, specifically using aluminum phosphide. And there's going to be limitation of the different types of fumigant activities that a PAC brown card holder can actually do. These are slated to go into effect as of January 1st of 2024. So we do have a year and some change before this starts affecting people. The reason this has happened is because we do have like a code of federal regulations, and the rules are that we have to be at least as stringent as those. We can be more, we can't be less. They changed theirs in 2017, and so through the slow COGS regulation change, now we have to change to match theirs. And that's why this is happening. Trust me, we don't sit home at night and think, how can we make lives difficult? So what's going to happen because of this impact to you guys is that everybody who has a PAC card is going to have to retake the test. And as of 1/1/2024, depending on your last name, which is, this is just what we're going to be doing. It's going to change county to county depending on how many growers they have in that county. You'll have to contact your local person to see what wave you guys are going to be in. But R through Z is going to be 1/2024, A through H 2/25, I through Q 26. They've updated the competencies so that the test is going to change. And so we have to do this new test to catch up with that. This is not optional. This is, if you want to keep a brown card, you do have to redo this test. They also redid the study guide. The study guide used to be a little $5 black and white sort of copy thing that's been around since, I don't know, the 80s or the 70s. They redid it recently, and they just released it, I think, earlier this year or late last year. I did bring a flyer with some QR codes on how you guys can get your hands on that new study guide if you want to jump the gun and start studying now. They're on the table outside, or you can just call the Ag Commissioner and we can direct you to the website. And it is going to be more expensive. It's a big, glossy, textbook-looking thing. The old one was $7. This one's going to be closer to 30. Okay, and just real quick for fumigant activities. Technically, under a PAC card, you can do soil fumigation. Nobody does, but they're going to take that ability away. Okay, and I'm going to blow through this kind of quick. Again, if you guys have questions, it's a lot of information. Just give us a call. We'll take all the time you need to deal with this stuff. So specifically, if you guys are using the aluminum phosphide tablets or pellets and you're doing rodent burrows, you're going to have to take a separate test, and that's going to be an add-on to the test for the PAC card, so you're going to have to take 2. And this doesn't apply to the poison grain. If any of you guys go to the ag department and get the baited oatmeal for bait stations, this isn't going to apply to that. Okay, so this again is to catch us up with Code Federal regulations. And like I said, there's a non-soil soil fumigation category that's kind of outside of the scope of what we're talking about here. But we do have a certificate option for the private applicators, and this is specifically for the bird pest fumigation option. This is going to come into play because this goes into effect in January 1st, 2024, and it's not going to be related to your last name change. So if you guys are wanting to use aluminum phosphide after 1/1/24 and say you're not slated to renew to take the test until 25, you either don't use aluminum phosphide until you renew or you renew early. Okay, I kind of got ahead of myself, so this slide basically says what I just told you. And then we always want to reiterate this. We get this question a lot because the aluminum phosphide labels are really complicated, and there's some specific triggers for different kind of respiratory protection that you guys have to give when you're using this stuff. If you don't have an aluminum phosphide type monitoring device, to be in compliance with the label, you and your employees have to do this application wearing a scuba, like the above water diving doodad. So the way that you get around this and don't spend $2,500 to $5,000 is you spend about $500 to $700 and you get this monitoring device and they have to wear that. That way you can prove if we go out there that you know what the concentration of phosphine is and that you guys are following the label and everything's good and safe. And then you also still have to do your fumigation management plans. Nothing is changing there. Just make sure if you're doing this and don't have access to a scuba that your fumigation management plan and your pesticide training for your employees tells them if that monitor goes off, that they're above a trigger for a respirator, they're just supposed to drop everything and run, basically. It's an evacuate kind of thing. Okay, and then for any other type of fumigation, the PAC card isn't going to cover that anymore, so you do have to have a QAC or QAL. If you're doing field fumigation, that's category O. Pretty much everybody uses a company for this, so that's not really going to have that much of an impact. If you guys are doing something like raisin stacks, storage pests, things like that, that's still going to require the QAL, QAC in the category A for industrial. All that is remaining the same. To wrap up here, brief plug, I know the CE credits, kind of when this is all phasing through isn't really going to matter, but if it does to you, if you're expiring this year, and why a lot of us are here, in addition to learning, you can go to our website. We have a CE and event calendar. Our website is kind of complicated. If you just Google Fresno County Ag Department, it'll take you right to it. And then our CE calendar is there, and then you can just, it all takes you the links to registrations and things like that. And we also have at the bottom of it some places where you guys can get some free online training. So if you guys are in a crunch and you need some hours real quick and you don't have time to do it, you can do it at 2 o'clock in the morning from your living room. Okay, and if you want more information about this, I know I threw a lot at you guys, just type in DPR regulations and it'll take you to the page that lists all this stuff for you. Okay, I think I'm out of time, but if you guys have any questions, I'm going to stick around for a while and you guys can come with me.
Thank you so much for that presentation.